Chosen one, stop right there. Before you scroll, before you dismiss this, before that familiar voice inside whispers, "This isn't for me." I need you to hear something that nobody has said to you clearly enough. What God did not give you yet was not punishment. It was protection. You cried over it. You know exactly what it is. You don't even have to say it out loud. It's already sitting on your chest right now. That dream, that healing, that relationship, that breakthrough you begged heaven for on your knees, sometimes at 2 in the morning when the house was quiet and nobody could see your tears. You watched other people receive it. People who didn't even ask for it. People who didn't fast for it, didn't pray for it, didn't sacrifice for it the way you did. And somewhere deep down, maybe you never said it aloud, but you thought it. Did God forget me? Am I being punished for something? Does my faithfulness even matter anymore? I'm here to tell you something that is going to shatter that lie in the next 60 minutes. What you thought was withheld from you, God was holding it. Holding it back from the wrong season, holding it away from the wrong hands. Holding it, and I need you to feel the weight of this, holding it away from a version of you that was not yet ready to carry it without being destroyed by it. That is not abandonment. That is a father's love. In a few minutes, I'll show you the one Bible pattern that proves delay can be the most profound act of mercy God ever performs. I'll show you why some doors stay locked, not to keep you out, but to keep you whole. And I'll share something near the end of this message, specifically for the person who almost gave up last night. Stay with me all the way through. But right now, if this already feels like it found you on purpose, type these words. He was holding it for me. Because chosen one. He was. Let me ask you something nobody in your life has been brave enough to ask you. How many times did you smile in public and completely break in private? How many Sunday mornings did you sit in that pew, singing about God's faithfulness, while something deep inside you was quietly dying? How many times did you say God is good out loud and mean it, while secretly wondering why your life still felt like it was standing still? Nobody asked. So you kept carrying it alone. And the longer you carried it, the heavier it got. There is a verse in the Bible that most preachers quote quickly and move past. But I want to stay here with you for a moment, because this verse is not just theology. This verse is your biography. Proverbs 13:12 says it plainly, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick." Not disappointed, not frustrated, sick. That word matters, because what you have been feeling is not weakness, it is not lack of faith. It is the documented, God-acknowledged reality of what happens to a human heart when it waits and waits and waits, and the thing it loves most still does not come. Your heart got sick, and you blamed yourself for the sickness. Here is what long seasons of waiting do to people, and I need you to hear this, because nobody has ever laid it out for you this honestly. First, it creates shame. You start to believe that other people are receiving because they deserve it, and you are waiting because something is wrong with you. You stop talking about your dream because you are embarrassed it still hasn't happened. You shrink. You go quiet. You start editing yourself around people who are thriving. Then comes comparison. You watched people younger than you, people who prayed less than you, people who sacrificed less than you, walk right into the thing you had been believing God for. And you smiled at their blessing while something inside you cracked just a little more. Then prayer gets heavy. What used to feel like conversation starts to feel like leaving voicemails that never get returned. You still pray, but the fire is lower now. You are no longer expectant, you are just faithful out of discipline, because you don't know what else to do. Then comes the numbness. You stop feeling the sting because you have been stung so many times. You tell yourself you have surrendered it to God, but the truth is, you have just gone numb to protect yourself from another disappointment. And then, and this is the part nobody talks about in church, comes the silent anger. Not the kind you shout, the quiet kind. The kind that sits behind your eyes when someone testifies about their miracle. The kind that makes you feel guilty for feeling it. The kind where you whisper in your most private moments, "God, why not me?" You never meant to feel that way. But you did. And you do. And that is not sin. That is a wounded heart still reaching toward heaven with whatever it has left. How many people assumed you were strong when the truth is you were just tired? Tired of believing, tired of explaining, tired of watching the calendar, tired of being the person who almost made it, tired of the version of your own story that never seems to move past chapter 1. And somewhere along the way, the cruelest thought crept in. Maybe I ruined it. Maybe I missed my window. Maybe God moved on and I didn't notice. That thought right there, that is not conviction. That is not discernment. That is the wound talking. That is what Proverbs called a sick heart. And a sick heart, left untreated, will rewrite the character of God to match its own pain. It will turn a loving father into a distant judge. It will turn holy timing into personal rejection. It will turn a closed door into a verdict on your worth. But here is what most people never learn, and I need you to hold on to this before we go any further. A sick heart can still be in a sacred process. The field that looks completely dead in winter is not dead. It is building roots underground that summer will never see. The house with all the lights off is not abandoned. Someone is still inside, working in the dark. The phone call that feels unanswered, the line is still open. It has always been open. God's silence is not God's absence. And in just a moment, I'm going to show you the difference between those two things, because that difference will change the way you read every single year of your life that felt wasted. If you know what it means to carry faith while carrying disappointment, type right now, "I'm still here," because you are. And that alone is evidence that heaven has not finished writing your story. The waiting was not the rejection. It was the preparation. And what God was preparing was worth every single day you waited. Now I need you to lean in close, because what I'm about to say next is the distinction that changes everything. There are two kinds of closed doors, and most people never learn the difference. They spend years, sometimes decades, grieving the wrong one. Some doors are closed because hell hates what's behind them. Some doors are delayed because heaven is guarding what's inside them. Those are not the same thing. And confusing them will cost you your peace, your faith, and sometimes your entire future. Here is what the enemy's no looks like in your life. When darkness is blocking something, confusion moves in like fog. You can't think straight. You can't pray clearly. Your soul feels thinner, like something is being drained out of you slowly, quietly, without your permission. The enemy doesn't just close a door. He whispers while he closes it. He says, "See, God doesn't care. You were never chosen. You were foolish to believe." That is the signature of hell. Confusion, shrinking, degradation, the slow erosion of your identity. But chosen one, God's not yet, feels different. When God is the one holding something back, there is pain. Yes, real pain. Nobody is pretending the waiting doesn't hurt. But underneath that pain, there is something else. Something you almost can't explain. A thread of preservation running through the middle of your suffering. A strange, quiet knowing that you are not abandoned, you are being shaped. There is delay, but there is also deep, intentional forming happening beneath the surface. There is mystery. But beneath the mystery, there is order. Hebrews 12:11 says it plainly. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Yet afterward, it produces a harvest of righteousness. Afterward. That word is doing everything. God is always working toward an afterward that your pain cannot yet see. Now let me ask you something direct. Think about the thing you've been waiting for. The thing you've cried over. The thing you've questioned God about in the silence of your own bedroom. Does it feel like confusion and degradation, like something is being stolen from you? Or does it feel like pressure and fire, like something is being forged inside you? Because one of those is the enemy stealing, and the other is God refining. Gold removed from the fire too soon is still soft. It cannot hold its shape. It cannot bear weight. The goldsmith doesn't pull it out because he enjoys watching it burn. He keeps it in the fire because he knows exactly what it needs to become. Are you willing to consider, just for a moment, that God has kept you in the fire, not because he abandoned you, but because he refuses to let you come out soft? There is a fruit on the tree that looks ready. The color is almost right. The shape is perfect. But bite into it too early, and it is bitter, astringent. It will make you recoil. That same fruit, left on the vine 3 more weeks, becomes something magnificent. Sweet, full, nourishing. The fruit didn't change. The timing did. Chosen one, what if you are that fruit? What if heaven has been saying not never but not yet, because I will not let you be picked before you are ready to feed the people I'm sending you to? And I want to be completely honest with you right now. Some of you have been blaming God for a door that the enemy closed. You've been angry at heaven for a theft that came from hell. And some of you have been crediting yourselves for pushing through a door that God was actually holding shut, protecting you from something on the other side that would have dismantled everything you'd built. Both of those misreadings are dangerous, which is exactly why the life of Joseph proves this truth with painful precision. A pit, a prison, years of silence, every door closed, every human connection that could have helped him, forgotten him. By every natural measure, God had said no, but God had never said no. God had been saying not yet while simultaneously positioning, preparing, and protecting a man who was being built to carry the weight of a nation. The pit was never proof the promise had died. The pit was part of the path to the palace. If you are beginning to see your delay differently right now, if something is shifting in your spirit, say these words out loud. God's timing is not cruelty. Say it like you mean it. Because, chosen one, your delay is not your verdict, it is your preparation. Some things are blocked because hell hates them. Some things are delayed because heaven is guarding them. And in just a moment we are going inside the story of Joseph. The full story, the part nobody preaches about. The part that will show you exactly how God turns a pit into a palace, and why everything you've suffered has been building towards something the enemy never saw coming. Let me take you back, not to a church, not to a sermon you've heard 100 times. I want to take you to a hole in the ground in the middle of the desert, 17 years old, stripped of his coat, thrown in by his own brothers. The sound of their laughter echoing above him while they sat down to eat bread. That boy's name was Joseph, and God had already shown him the dream. That is the part that wrecks you if you think about it too long. God did not give Joseph the dream after the pit. God did not give him the vision after the prison. God gave him the dream first while he was still safe, still home, still wrapped in his Father's favor, and then allowed everything that looked like the opposite of that dream to happen anyway. Think about what that must have felt like. You saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bow down to you. You saw your destiny as clearly as you've ever seen anything. And then the very people who were supposed to walk beside you in that destiny grabbed you, stripped you, and dropped you into darkness. Joseph did not fall into that pit by accident. He fell into it carrying a promise. And here is what nobody talks about enough. The coat came early, the throne came later. Because gifts can arrive before the soul is ready to carry where they are taking you. Joseph at 17 was gifted, but he was not yet formed. He was anointed, but he was not yet tested. He was chosen, but he still had pride that needed stripping, arrogance that needed breaking, immaturity that would have destroyed the very people he was destined to save. If Pharaoh had handed Joseph the throne at 17, Joseph would have been a disaster wearing a crown. God knew that. So, God used the pit, not to punish Joseph, not to abandon him, but to begin the most sacred construction project in the ancient world, the interior rebuilding of a man whose outer assignment was too heavy for who he was at that moment. Chosen one, hear me clearly right now. Every stage Joseph walked through looked like contradiction. Slavery looked like the dream dying. Potiphar's house looked like a small consolation prize. False accusation looked like God had turned his back. Prison looked like the final proof that the vision was a lie. But watch what was actually happening beneath the surface. In slavery, his ego was stripped. In Potiphar's house, his administrative wisdom was being built. In false accusation, his integrity was being proven unbreakable. In prison, his discernment was being sharpened to surgical precision. Every ugly stage was not erasing the dream. Every ugly stage was making Joseph into someone who could survive the dream without being consumed by it. The route that looked most unlike the promise was the very route preparing Joseph to carry the promise. Now, let me ask you something, and I need you to sit with this question. What if your pit has been doing the same thing? What if the years that felt like contradiction were not God forgetting your name, but God refusing to hand something sacred to a version of you that would have misused it, been crushed by it, or lost it entirely? What if the delay was not divine neglect, but divine construction? Because Joseph did not walk out of prison the same man who walked in. Something had been built in that darkness that could not have been built anywhere else. Roots don't grow under stage lights. They grow in hidden soil, in pressure, in places where no one is watching and no one is applauding. And when Joseph finally stood before Pharaoh, he was ready. Not just positionally ready, not just strategically ready, he was ready in his soul. That is what God was doing in the silence of your waiting. Not withholding, not punishing, not forgetting. Building something in you that the throne of your assignment is going to require. The prison was not the contradiction of the promise. The prison was the classroom of the promise. If Joseph's story feels like your life right now, if you have been sitting in your own pit wondering why God showed you something, and then seemed to allow everything to move in the opposite direction, type these words. Right now, the pit was not the end, because it wasn't for Joseph, and it is not for you, but chosen one. Joseph is not the only one, because in the next part of this message, we confront one of the hardest truths in all of spiritual life. Sometimes God does not just hold back what you need. Sometimes God holds back what you love, until he knows with certainty that you will not love it more than you love him. And that truth is about to change everything you thought you understood about why you have been waiting. Now I need to take you somewhere deeper, because what we just uncovered about delay and protection, that was only the first layer. There is something beneath it, something more sacred, something that most people never reach because they stop at the question, why is God making me wait? Without ever asking the harder question, the question that changes everything. Not when will God give it to me, but what will I do with it when he does? Let me take you to a mountain. Genesis 22. Abraham, the man who waited 100 years for a son, 100 years of silence, of barren nights, of Sarah's tears soaking into his shoulder, 100 years of wondering if God's promise was real or if he had simply misheard. And then Isaac came, and Abraham held that boy like he held the breath he had been waiting a century to exhale. But then God said something that should stop every single one of us cold. Take your son, your only son, the one you love, and offer him. Now listen to me carefully, chosen one, because this is where most people miss it entirely. God was not being cruel. God was not taking back the promise. God was doing something far more surgical than that. He was checking Abraham's hands. Were they open or were they clenched? Because here is the truth that will either set you free or shake you to your core. Some of you are not still waiting because the blessing has not been prepared. You are still waiting because your hands are not open enough to receive it without worshiping it. That dream you have been carrying, that healing, that restoration, that relationship, that vindication, somewhere along the years of waiting, something shifted. It stopped being a hope and became a demand. It stopped being a prayer and became an obsession. And without realizing it, You began to need that thing more than you needed the God who promised it. And a good father will never hand a child something that will replace him in that child's heart. Never. So let me ask you something direct. And I need you to sit with this. When you pray for what you've been waiting for, are you praying to draw closer to God? Or are you praying to finally feel like God owes you something? Because there is a difference. And God sees it. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." Not earn enough spiritual points and God will pay out. Not suffer long enough and heaven will settle the debt. Delight yourself in Him. Not in the promise, in the promiser. And sometimes the most merciful thing God can do in a long season of waiting is burn away everything in you that wants the gift more than the giver. That is not punishment. That is the altar fire. And altar fire does not destroy you, it purifies you. Abraham raised that knife. And in that moment, in that terrifying, holy, impossible moment, he proved something. Not to God, because God already knew. He proved it to himself. That Isaac was not his God. That the promise had not replaced the promiser. And the moment his hands opened, heaven moved. "Now I know," God said. "Now I know that you fear me, chosen one." Some of you are standing at your own mountain right now, and God is not asking you to give up the dream. He is asking you one question. Can you lay it down without losing your faith? Can you say and mean it, Lord, even if this never comes the way I planned it, even if the timeline never matches what I demanded, even if the version I insisted on never arrives, I still choose you? Because the second that prayer leaves your lips in sincerity, something moves in the unseen, not because you earned it, but because your hands finally opened. Right where you are right now, whisper this. Lord, I trust you more than the timing. Say it like you mean it. Say it even if it costs you something to say it, because it might. Real surrender always costs something. That is what makes it real. And here is what I need you to hold on to as we go forward. This mountain Abraham climbed, it was not the end of the story. It was the turning point of it. The moment of surrender was the moment of release. And that means something powerful for where you are standing right now. What felt like God taking something from you may have been God teaching you how to carry it without being consumed by it. What felt like deprivation may actually have been preservation. And what looked like the altar being the end was actually the altar being the beginning. Because, chosen one, the next thing I am about to show you is the tenderness hidden inside the weight, the mercy wrapped inside the silence. And once you see it, you will never read your delay the same way again. Now I need you to stay with me, because what I'm about to say next, some of you are going to resist it. Your pride is going to push back. But your spirit already knows it's true. You were not ready. Not because you were weak. Not because you were unworthy. Not because God loved someone else more than He loved you. You were not ready because the blessing you were asking for was heavier than the person you were at the time, and God loved you too much to crush you with it. Think about this honestly. When you were praying hardest for that door to open, who were you? What was your emotional state? How were you handling the small things, the small betrayals, the small disappointments, the small financial pressures? Because here is the truth, nobody preaches loudly enough. It is one thing to ask for increase. It is another thing entirely to carry increase without losing your peace, your humility, your soul, and your relationship with God. Proverbs 24:27 says it plainly. Prepare your work outside, get your field ready, and after that, build your house. The field first, the house second. God is not cruel. God is sequential. He builds foundations before He raises buildings. He widens the base before He adds the height. And chosen one, while you were waiting, while you were crying, while you were wondering why heaven had gone silent, He was widening your foundation. Let me be specific, because this is not abstract theology. This is your life. During that wait, God was building your emotional stamina, your ability to absorb disappointment without becoming bitter. He was developing your spiritual discernment, your ability to recognize the wrong voices wearing the right faces. He was maturing your financial wisdom, your ability to steward provision without letting it redefine your identity. He was teaching you how to say no, how to walk away, how to sit still when everything in you wanted to react. He was strengthening your shoulders, because the weight coming your way required a different set of shoulders than the ones you had 3 years ago. You know this is true. You are not the same person you were when you first started praying for it. You are stronger, quieter in your spirit, harder to shake, harder to fool. That is not coincidence. That is construction. The Bible describes it in Mark 2:22, "You cannot pour new wine into old wineskins. The old container will burst. The wine will be lost. Everything destroyed." God was not withholding the wine. He was enlarging the wineskin. And some of you needed years of enlarging. Not because you were broken, but because what God was preparing to pour into your life was extraordinary. And extraordinary blessings demand extraordinary capacity. A crown is not placed on an unprepared head. Metal is refined, impurities burned away, the surface made worthy, and then, only then, is the engraving done. You were being engraved, chosen one, while you thought you were being ignored. Now here is the part that stings, the part most teachers skip over because it's uncomfortable. Some of you received things early, maybe a relationship, an opportunity, a platform, and it fell apart. Not because the blessing was wrong, but because the timing was wrong, because you were not yet who you needed to be to hold it. You already know what I'm talking about. And you look back now with the eyes you have today, with the wisdom that only comes from walking through fire, and you understand something you couldn't have understood then. Getting it too early would have destroyed you. The promotion would have fed the pride that needed to die first. The relationship would have attached to the wound that needed to heal first. The money would have amplified the fear that needed to be dismantled first. God saw all of it. Every layer, every fracture, every place where the blessing would have become a burden, and he held it back in mercy. Not cruelty, mercy. If you can feel right now, deep in your spirit, that God was doing more in you during that waiting season than you ever gave him credit for, I want you to type something in the comments. Type, "He was preparing me to carry it," because you were not sitting still. You were being built. And the person you are today, tested, refined, humbled, sharpened, and still standing, that person is ready in ways the earlier version of you simply was not. But there is one more painful piece of this process that nobody wants to talk about. Because while God was building your capacity, he was also removing certain people from around you, people you loved, people you trusted, people whose absence felt like abandonment. It was not abandonment, it was alignment. And in the next part of this message, I am going to show you exactly why God had to clear certain seats before he could fill your table, and why the loneliness you felt during that season was not a sign that you were forgotten. It was a sign that you were being prepared. Chosen one, I need to go somewhere uncomfortable with you right now, because God has been holding something back, and we already established that the delay was not punishment. But here is what nobody tells you about the waiting season. Sometimes the blessing was ready, and you were not the reason it was delayed. The people around you were. Think about that for a moment. Really sit with it. You prayed, you fasted, you remained faithful when it would have been so much easier to walk away, and still nothing moved. And you assumed the problem was you, your past, your failures, your unworthiness. But what if the door was not stuck because of your lack of faith? What if God was watching who still had access to you? John 15:2 says it plainly. "Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away." Not some, not occasionally, every branch. God is not sentimental about what is killing your harvest. He is a gardener first. And sometimes the most loving thing a gardener does is cut, not to hurt you, to save the fruit. Here is what the enemy never wanted you to understand. Some of the people who left your life, or who you had to walk away from, were not your loss. They were your release. There were people in your circle who needed you small. They celebrated your struggle because your struggle made them comfortable. They could handle the version of you that was broken, confused, and reaching. But the moment you started rising, the moment something in you shifted and you stopped apologizing for your gifts, they got quiet, or they got loud in the wrong way. And you felt that. You felt the shift before you understood it. Let me be direct with you right now, chosen one. Some of those people were manipulators who fed off your uncertainty. Some were users who mistook your generosity for weakness. Some were doubters who projected their own ceilings onto your calling. And some, and this is the painful one, some genuinely loved you, but they only knew the diminished version of you. And the new version God was building made them feel left behind. None of that makes them monsters, but all of it made them dangerous to your next level. God cannot pour a new blessing through a vessel still surrounded by old access points. He cannot release an inheritance into hands that are still holding on to relationships that were slowly draining the life out of his purpose in you. So he pruned. He cleared the wolves away from the gate. He drained the swamp water before planting. He removed the cracked beams before finishing the house. And yes, it hurt like grief. Because some of those people felt like home. But chosen one, hear me say this with everything in me. Not every loss was theft. Some losses were escorts into alignment. Say that again slowly in your spirit. Some losses were escorts into alignment. The loneliness you endured was not God abandoning you. It was God teaching you discernment. It was heaven breaking your addiction to human approval, so that when the blessing arrived, you would not hand it over to the wrong hands within the first 60 days of receiving it. Because that is what would have happened. You know it. I know it. God knew it before either of us. The people who needed you weak would have consumed what God prepared for the strong version of you. Psalm 23 says, He prepares a table before you in the presence of your enemies. Not after your enemies leave. Not once the room is cleared. He prepares it right there in the middle of the tension, because God is not intimidated by who is watching. But he does require that you trust the seating arrangement. And sometimes, trusting the seating arrangement means accepting that certain people did not make the table. That is not cruelty. That is covenant. So if God had to remove someone from your life, someone you loved, someone you built with, someone you never imagined would not be there for the breakthrough, I need you to do something right now. Type these words. Lord, thank you for what you removed. Not because the pain was not real. It was real. But because heaven does not waste a pruning. Every relationship that ended, every friendship that faded, every person who walked away during your wilderness, they were not the end of your story. They were the clearing of the path. But here is where it gets even harder. Chosen one. Because after the people were removed, after the pruning was complete, and the gate was cleared, there was still one enemy left standing directly between you and everything God had prepared. And that enemy was not outside of you. It was living in the quiet spaces of your own mind. The battle of doubt, fear, and self-sabotage, the one that begins the moment the blessing finally draws close. That is exactly where we are going next. And if you have ever gotten close to a breakthrough, only to somehow pull back from it yourself, you cannot afford to miss what comes next. Chosen one, I need you to lean in right now, because what I am about to say could be the most important warning you have ever received. You have come too far. You have endured too much. You have held on through nights that would have broken most people. And right now, right at this very threshold, the greatest danger is not the enemy in front of you. The greatest danger is you. Hear me clearly. The closer you get to the promise, the louder the temptation becomes to grab at something, anything, just to make the waiting stop. That is not faith. That is exhaustion pretending to be a decision. And exhaustion has buried more destinies than any devil ever could. The Bible tells us about Esau, a man chosen, a man with birthright, a man who carried inheritance in his very bloodline. And do you know what destroyed him? Not an enemy, not a battle, not a betrayal, a bowl of stew. Genesis 25-32. Esau said, "I am about to die. What good is the birthright to me?" He was tired, he was hungry, he was done waiting, and he traded everything God preserved for him for one moment of instant relief. Chosen one, do not be Esau. Let me ask you something direct, something that might sting. Is there something right now, a person, a situation, a compromise, a door you know God closed, that you are thinking about reopening? Not because it is right, but because the wilderness is getting uncomfortable, and Egypt at least felt familiar. That familiar pain is lying to you. Familiar does not mean safe. Familiar means you already know how it ends, and it did not end well. That is why God pulled you out of it. Do not mistake the comfort of the known for the confirmation of God. There are specific ways chosen people sabotage themselves right before release, and I need to name every single one of them, because one of them has your name on it right now. Reopening doors God already closed, because silence feels like rejection. Talking yourself out of peace because peace feels too unfamiliar after years of chaos. Sharing your promise too soon with the wrong people, and watching their doubt infect your faith like poison in clean water. Forcing the timing because you decided God is moving too slowly and you can help him along. Settling not because it is right, but because you got tired of standing. Returning to what God already called you out of, because the new place has not yet shown its fruit. And the most dangerous one of all, mistaking the absence of instant results for the absence of God's movement. Do not let exhaustion make you shake hands again with what God delivered you from. Think about bread still rising in the oven. You can smell it, you can almost taste it. Everything in you wants to open that door right now, but if you pull it out too soon, it collapses. Not because the bread was bad, because the timing was broken. God is not withholding the bread from you, he is protecting the rise. And if you crack that oven door right now, out of impatience, out of fear, out of exhaustion, you will ruin what he has been carefully preparing. Some of you are 3 minutes from the bread being done. Do not open the door. The children of Israel stood at the edge of everything God promised them. And when the road got hard, they did not fight forward. Numbers 14-4. They said, "Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt, back to slavery, back to chains, back to a place that broke them, because at least in Egypt, they knew where their next meal was coming from." And that one decision cost an entire generation their promised land. Chosen one, you are not going back to Egypt. Not now. Not after everything it took to get you here. I need you to feel the weight of this. You can be standing inches from the miracle and still destroy it by reaching for a counterfeit while tired. The enemy does not need to stop you. He just needs to exhaust you long enough that you stop yourself. Do not give him that victory. Do not trade your preserved promise for instant relief. Do not sell your birthright for a bowl of stew. If you refuse right now, in this moment, to go back to what almost broke you, type these words: "I will not trade destiny for relief." Say it like you mean it. Because chosen one, the next section of this message is going to show you something that will confirm what your spirit has already been sensing. Something is beginning to move, and the person who can feel it but cannot yet explain it, that is exactly who the next part was written for. Stay with me, chosen one. Stay with me right here, because this is the part most people miss. They spend so long asking God when that they never learn to recognize how he announces the answer before it arrives. God rarely sends a trumpet before a breakthrough. He sends something quieter, something you could easily overlook if you are not paying attention. He sends a shift. And here is the first thing I need you to understand. Before God moves anything on the outside of your life, He moves something on the inside first. Think about dawn. The sun does not explode into the sky without warning. Long before the light breaks the horizon, the darkness begins to thin. The birds know it. The air shifts. Something changes before anything is visible. That is exactly how God works before a season of release. The first sign is not noise. It is deep, steady readiness. So let me ask you something direct, and I want you to sit with this question honestly. Have you noticed lately that some of the things that used to consume you, the obsessions, the cravings, the desperate reaching for things that were never good for you, have quietly lost their grip? That is not coincidence. That is consecration. When old cravings stop fitting, it means God has been reshaping your interior without announcing it. The coat that used to feel comfortable now feels wrong. The room you used to run to for escape now feels hollow. Chosen one, that discomfort is a sign. You have outgrown the old season. Psalm 23 says, He leads beside still waters. Not turbulent waters, not the waters of panic and performance and desperate striving. Still waters. And here is what I know after decades of walking with God and walking with His people. One of the clearest signs that God is preparing to release what He has been holding is this: you stop begging from a wounded place and start standing from a formed place. Read that again. Let it land. You are no longer on your knees in desperation. You are on your knees in devotion. There is a difference. One comes from fear, the other comes from formation. And along with that stillness, something else arrives. Clarity. Not the kind you manufactured through endless planning and striving. A clarity that simply settles over you like morning light. Scriptures that used to feel like distant history suddenly feel like they were written this week. For you, about your exact situation, about your exact address. That is the Word becoming alive again. And when the Word comes alive, it means heaven is close. New people begin appearing in your life. Not the ones who drain you, not the ones who confirm your fears. People who carry something clean about them, a grounded peace, a holy confirmation. You cannot always explain why, but being around them feels like alignment, not accident. Wrong doors begin losing their appeal. You used to exhaust yourself knocking on them. Now you walk past them without even turning your head. That is not indifference, chosen one. That is discernment. That is God removing the appetite for what was never yours. And then there is this, the one nobody talks about enough. Unusual strength after long weakness. You were worn down for so long you forgot what it felt like to wake up ready. And then one morning, without explanation, something is different. The weight is lighter. The fog has lifted. Your chest does not feel like a stone is sitting on it. The river ice is cracking. The current is about to break through. Isaiah 40:31 says, Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength, not might renew, shall. That is a covenant word. That is God's guarantee written into eternal law. The waiting was not wasted. The waiting was weight training. And now the wait is producing something in you that cannot be faked, cannot be rushed, and cannot be stolen. Less desperation, more grounded expectancy. That is the posture of someone standing at the edge of their promise, not chasing it, not begging for it, simply positioned and ready to receive. You do not need to chase what God has already assigned to you, chosen one. You only need to obey the next step in front of you. The lock is clicking. The door is about to swing open. If you feel that shift even now, even before you see the full evidence with your natural eyes, write these words right now. I believe the season is changing. Because believing before seeing is not desperation. It is the purest form of faith. And faith is the only currency heaven accepts. And now we arrive at the final revelation. The answer to the question that started this entire message. The truth that will change the way you see every single delay, every closed door, every unanswered prayer in your entire history. Why did God hold it? The answer may be the most important thing you hear today. Chosen one, stay with me right here, because everything we have walked through together, every layer, every wound, every question you carried into this message, it was all building to this one truth. God did not delay your blessing because he forgot you. He delayed it because he loved you too much to let it arrive before you were ready to receive it without it destroying you. Read that again. Let it land. There are people walking this earth right now carrying blessings they were not ready for. Money that became poison, relationships that became prisons, platforms that became traps, opportunities that arrived before character was built to sustain them, and it all collapsed. Not because God failed them, but because the promise outran the preparation. And here you are, still standing, still believing, still in the waiting room. You looked at that and called it punishment. Heaven looked at that and called it protection. Psalm 84:11 declares it plainly. No good thing will he withhold from those who walk uprightly. Not some good things, not the convenient things, no good thing. Which means, if it has not arrived yet, the timing is part of the gift. He held it until your character could carry it without corruption. He held it until your heart would not worship it above the one who gave it. He held it until your discernment could recognize the counterfeits surrounding it. He held it until your peace was no longer dependent on receiving it. He held it until the wrong people, the ones who would have stolen it, sabotaged it, or redirected it, were moved out of position. He held it until the ground of your soul was prepared enough to receive it without being overwhelmed by it. He was not punishing you with delay. He was protecting the promise from wrong timing, from counterfeit hands, from spiritual theft, and yes, even from the unhealed places inside you that could not yet carry what you prayed for. Think of a sealed letter, written years ago, signed, stamped, and addressed with your name, sitting in heaven's vault, not lost, not forgotten, waiting for the appointed day of delivery. Think of an inheritance locked in trust. The money is real, the will is signed, but the heir must come of age before the release. The delay was never about doubt, it was about readiness. Think of a crown kept in velvet, not discarded, not given to someone else, preserved carefully, deliberately, until the head is strong enough to wear it with dignity. That is your story, chosen one. What God kept from you, he kept for you. So I need you to stop something right now. Stop grieving over protected things as if they were lost things. Stop calling guarded promises abandoned promises. Stop measuring the depth of God's love by the speed of his answers. Isaiah 49:15 asks a question that should shake you to your foundation. Can a mother forget the baby at her breast? And then God answers his own question. Even if she could, I will not forget you. Your name is engraved. Your season is sealed. Your promise has not expired. What he designated for you cannot be claimed by anyone else. What he guards, he knows how to release. What he promised, he has not forgotten. And now, right now, I want you to pray this with me. Lord, I release my timeline. I trust your protection. I trust your process. I trust that what you held for me will arrive in the right season, with the right strength in me to carry it. I will stop calling your mercy a delay. I will start calling it exactly what it is, love. Chosen one, if this word found you exactly when you needed it, and I believe it did type these words right now, it was never denied, it was preserved. Let that declaration go out. Let it echo, because someone else needs to see it. Someone in your circle right now thinks their delay means God walked away. Send this to them. Be the reason they do not give up tonight. And if you are in a hidden season, if you are doing the quiet work, the unseen obedience, the midnight prayers nobody applauds, stay connected here. because these messages were built for you, for the ones who refuse to let go. Chosen one, hear me one final time. What was held back was not withheld in cruelty, it was preserved in love. The bread is not burned, it is still in the oven. The bridge is not destroyed, it is being reinforced. The rain has not abandoned the earth, it is being held in the clouds until the ground is ready to receive every single drop without flooding. And you are almost ready. The wait is not your sentence, it is your preparation. And what God has prepared for you is worth every single day you had to trust Him in the dark. Go forward, walk steady. The appointed time is closer than it has ever been. And heaven has never stopped holding it for you.